In an incarceration system meant for rehabilitation and justice, sometimes love takes a dangerous, twisted turn. This is the story of two men drawn together behind bars by fate and proximity, only for their passion to end in a shocking betrayal. What began as a tender connection evolved into something suffocating, leading to a crime that no one saw coming. The horrors in prison aren't just physical. They can be emotional, psychological, and painfully intimate. Today we uncover how a relationship inside concrete walls spiraled into tragedy, and we reflect on what drives love to become lethal, because real life is often darker than fiction. At the start, they were quiet, two inmates sharing whispered words in a crowded cell block. In the monotony of prison routines, they found something rare, emotional refuge. But as their attraction deepened, boundaries dissolved. Other inmates watched as their affection became obsession. Smuggled letters turned into power plays. Kindness became control. Soon nobody could tell where devotion ended and manipulation began. It was a dynamic threaded with jealousy, fear, and danger. And when outside pressures came in, everything unraveled. Their relationship unfolded in messages and late-night conversations, confessions of love, then accusations of betrayal. One partner began monitoring the other's interactions, demanding loyalty. Possessions vanished, whispers spread, factions in the block emerged. Staff noticed tension, but attributed it to general prison culture. No alarm bells rang, until one day a routine check escalated into violence. It happened so quickly, so brutally, the entire block watched helplessly. What was meant to be emotional control turned physical, leaving everyone shocked. Investigators soon stepped in, and the official narrative shifted abruptly from romance to homicide. The accused claimed self-defense, fear, regret. Defense attorneys centered the relationship as codependent, rife with emotional abuse. Prosecutors painted a different picture of a calculated crime born from possessiveness and rage. Witness testimonies varied. Some described tenderness in the early months. Others recounted strict rules and punishments inside the cell. The jury would have to untangle love, power, and intent, all within a prison setting few outsiders fully understand. Expert psychologists were called to evaluate. Did this case reflect a pathological attachment, a narcissistic partner exerting dominance, or two men caught in a spiral neither could control? Profiles revealed signs of trauma, codependency, intense emotional volatility. Therapists highlighted that prison environments often intensify mental health fractures. People without support become susceptible to manipulation. And when romantic bonds form in captivity, they can distort quickly. This wasn't just a romance gone wrong. It was psychological warfare in an enclosed space. Outside the prison walls, families grappled with disbelief. Mothers and fathers, hoping for rehabilitation, instead watched their sons at the center of a murder case. Some refused to believe the violent end could follow so suddenly on something as hopeful as love. Letters from both men echoed confusion and pain, alternating between declarations of trust and pleas for freedom. Families demanded answers. What really triggered the final act? Was it betrayal, fear of abandonment, or survival instincts gone awry? The trial was headline news as details emerged: clandestine meetings, forbidden romance, threats whispered in darkness. Media commentary divided public opinion. Some saw lovers pushed to the edge by circumstance. Others saw a dangerous relationship built on deceit. Every day, commentators debated prison policy, the role of mental health services behind bars, and whether same-sex relationships in prison carry extra stigmas. Many called for reforms to better manage interpersonal dynamics and prevent emotional crises inside correctional facilities. For the jury, the challenge was enormous. They had to weigh volumes of letters, behavioral reports, mental health evaluations, and testimony from inmates and guards alike. Was this manslaughter in the heat of emotional turmoil, or a planned killing by someone determined to control the other? The defense argued about survival in a violent system. The prosecution spoke of mania hidden under affection. The verdict would redefine public perception and change lives forever. When the verdict finally came, guilty of second-degree murder, the atmosphere in the courtroom was raw. Some family members wept. Others stood in silence. The convicted partner nodded calmly, expression unreadable. The other was not present to react. No one saw closure in that verdict, only new questions. Could intervention have prevented this outcome? Was intervention even possible in an environment designed for isolation? The case raised uncomfortable truths about love, violence, and confinement. Even after sentencing, debates raged. Prison psychologists published reflections on how romantic entanglement behind bars can amplify mental distress. Reform advocates pointed to this case as an example of systemic failure. No support systems for emotional crises, too little oversight on inmate relationships, too much assumed privacy. And while advocates pushed for change, both families continued grieving. A narrative forever tarnished by love turned lethal behind cold, concrete walls. Behind the bars, the story did not end with the trial. Both men faced separate fates, one serving a lengthy sentence for murder, the other grappling with guilt and loss. Letters exchanged from prison walls revealed lingering emotions: regret, anger, confusion. A complicated mix only those inside could truly understand. Their story became a case study for prison officials, psychologists, and advocates alike, highlighting how love can thrive and then implode in the most confined spaces. This tragic tale also cast a spotlight on prison culture itself, a world where power dynamics are constantly shifting and emotional vulnerability can be weaponized. Relationships in such an environment face unique challenges. Trust is fragile, loyalties are tested, and survival often demands harsh choices. For many, love inside prison is not just romantic. It's a strategy, a shield, or sometimes a deadly trap. Understanding this complexity is vital to preventing future tragedies. The public reaction to the case was mixed. Some expressed sympathy, viewing the men as victims of circumstance and harsh environments. Others condemned the violence, demanding tougher sentences and stricter monitoring of inmate behavior. Social media sparked debates about rehabilitation versus punishment and whether prisons are equipped to handle the emotional needs of inmates. The case became a mirror reflecting society's struggles with justice and compassion. Behind every statistic is a human story, and this one was layered with contradictions. What begins as a beacon of hope, a connection between two people, can transform into control and destruction. It begs the question, how do we protect vulnerable individuals inside prisons without stripping them of their humanity? How do we balance safety with emotional support in an often harsh and unforgiving system? The families involved still wrestle with pain and unanswered questions. They have attended hearings, spoken to counselors, and sought understanding in a narrative filled with heartbreak. Their voices remind us that crime affects not just those directly involved, but entire networks of loved ones left to pick up the pieces. Healing in such cases is a slow and painful process, complicated by stigma and silence. Meanwhile, correctional institutions began re-evaluating policies on inmate relationships. Some introduced programs aimed at providing emotional support, conflict resolution, and mental health counseling tailored to the unique stresses of prison life. The case prompted officials to acknowledge gaps in their systems, acknowledging that managing love and violence behind bars requires more than surveillance. Experts continue to study the psychological impact of incarceration on relationships, emphasizing that intense emotional bonds in confined settings can have unpredictable outcomes. They warn of the dangers of isolation, lack of privacy, and constant stress that amplify volatility. Their research urges policymakers to consider these factors in prison reforms aimed at reducing violence and improving inmate well-being. As the years pass, this story remains a cautionary tale, a reminder of the thin line between love and obsession, support and control. It challenges us to look beyond headlines and see the human complexities within prison walls. It calls for compassion, vigilance, and better systems to protect those who live and love in captivity. This case also sparked broader discussions about LGBTQ+ inmates' rights and protections. Advocates argue that these individuals face heightened risks of abuse and discrimination, making support systems and safe environments even more critical. The story of these two men sheds light on the intersection of sexuality, violence, and incarceration, a conversation that society can no longer ignore. Ultimately, this is a story about love lost and lives forever changed, a stark example of how the most intimate relationships can become the deadliest when placed under extreme pressure. It forces us to ask difficult questions about the nature of love, control, and survival, not just inside prison, but everywhere. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more real-life crime stories that deserve to be heard. Turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. And tell us in the comments, do you think this tragedy could have been prevented? Your voice matters, and your engagement helps spread awareness.